All right, so there's just one thing that I wanted to mention from the last lesson that I didn't actually put in there, and that has to do with ensuring that all of your animation controls are kind of zeroed out wherever you move them. And so what I mean by that is, let's just take for example that we've moved the eye control, okay? And we decided that for whatever reason we thought that this was the right location for it. Now, having done that, you'll see that we've actually changed the values of translate Y and translate Z. They were originally at 0, and now they're at these values. And likely, if you moved any of these controls, they're all going to have some kind of different translate value, and possibly even a different rotate value, depending on how you move them around. So once you have them in the location that you like them, you'll need to go through each of them and freeze their transformations. So that when we freeze transformations, it means that all the values get reset back to 0 for the translates, 0 for the rotates, and 1 for the scales. To do that, we just go to Modify, Freeze Transformations. As soon as I do that, you'll see that they get zeroed out. And this just means that we now know exactly where home is for each of these different controls. Now, I'm just going to undo all of that to go back to where I started from. And I also recommend that you check the head as well to do the same thing. So this is more or less at home, but I'm just going to do a slight freeze transformations here. I've saved it out on my my custom menu as well, and there we go. So what we're going to do now is start setting this up so that the controls actually have an effect on the joints, and that this actually starts behaving like a real rig. So the very first thing that we're going to do is come in here and set it up so that this root control affects this shoulder root joint. And the way we're going to do that is by choosing what's going to be the parent object first, and then shift select the child object. And we're going to go to Constrain, Parent, and just choose my options there. Maintain offset is on, which is what I want, and we'll choose Add. So now, as I move this around, right, you'll see that it actually is moving the joints around. And I just wanted to point out here that it's always a good idea to have gimbal mode enabled. So I'm just holding down the E key for our standard rotation tool, E, and then left mouse button clicking and choosing gimbal. That way I'm only moving one axis at a time, and it's less likely for me to get in trouble. So you can even see that I can actually translate this whole thing around as well if I wanted to. I'm just going to put it back so that everything is back at its original values. Now we're going to do the same process for each of these controls and their associated joints. So I'm going to select the NECO1 control and then the NECO1 joint, and I'll create another parent constraint. I have created a parent constraint button here, and the way I do that is if I have an operation that I use over and over and over again, it's easier sometimes just to get it from the menu than it is from, or easier to get it from the tabs than it is to get it having to click up here each time. So I just hold down Control and Shift and then click on that operation, and it will drop it into my menu, which happens to be my custom menu right now. So I get NECO1 and NECO1 selected, so I'll create a parent constraint there. And each time I do this, I do just verify that it is working. You see that it is. Do the same thing here. Parent constraint. All right, so the next one is the head control, the occipital condyle. So the animation control that is in charge of that is going to be this guy up here, the big head control. So I'm going to choose the head control, then the joint, and create the parent constraint. Again, verify that it is working. Right? Cool. So there is a bit of a problem here, though. If we look at rotating NECO1, for instance, and I try to rotate that around, you can see that, yeah, it's rotating, and there actually is rotation happening on that joint, but it's not going anywhere beyond that because this guy here is getting in the way. So what I need is for these animation controls to actually affect each other. At the moment, they have no effect on each other. They are just controlling joints, but not each other. And so the way we're going to do this is kind of go back in reverse order And instead of doing parent constraints, we're just going to do parenting, basic parenting. And we're actually going to start up here with our blend shape control. So I'm going to grab him, and I'm going to take, this is basically going to be the child object, and then I'm going to grab the parent object, which is the head control. I'm just going to hit P for parent on the keyboard. So now as I rotate this guy, see that the blend shape control comes along for the ride. And then grab that, which will be the child of the neck O2 control, P to parent. So grab that, and those two come along for the ride. So neck O2 is going to be the child of neck O1, P to parent. And neck O1 is going to be the child of the root control, P to parent. So you can see here I rotate that around, all the joints come along, rotate this guy, and because this is a child of this, if I rotate this, this guy rotates as well, which is nice. That way everything's behaving like a system that we would expect. I can create nice full rotations here and have all the joints behaving the way that I would expect them to. So let's make sure that everybody's back to 0, because that can be a bit of a pain if you don't reset everything before you start moving on. All right, cool. So we have the basic joint setup working there. Now let's take a look at some of the other options that we have in here. Let's start with the jaw control. Now the jaw control, this little control here, its job is going to be to cause the jaw joint to rotate. And we're going to use a different kind of constraint in order for this to happen. We're going to use what's called an orient constraint. So what we're going to do is grab what is going to be the parent object, and then we're going to shift select the child object, which will be the jaw joint. We're going to go up to constrain, and we're going to choose orient. We'll just take a look at the options, but those are the defaults, and that's fine, ensuring that maintain offset is on. Choose add. And so what happens now is that when I rotate this, the jaw joint comes along as well, which is very convenient. But just as we saw before, if I rotate my neck, the jaw control here is not being affected by that yet. So to think about this, where is the right control for this to be parented to? Well, it's probably going to be this guy up here. So we're going to choose the child first, and then the parent, and then just hit P to parent. So now whenever I rotate the head up there, or anything that controls the head, they come along with it. Okay, so that's nice and simple and pretty straightforward, I hope. So we have some of the other controls up here to think about as well. Let's have a look at a few of these. So one of the probably most important ones to get working right is to get the eyes properly set up. So what we want to do here, and I'm just going to go into wireframe on shaded first, is set it up so that this control here affects this joint in such a fashion that wherever this control sits in the scene, the joint, and therefore the eyeball, looks at it. And that is a constraint called an aim constraint. So what we're going to do here is, let me just turn off the visibility of the head real quick, and you can see that the head here just needs to be added to this display layer. So I'll just right click on that, add selected object, and just turn that off real quick. We're just going to click on our parent object first, and then we'll click on the child, which will be the joint there. We're going to go to constrain, aim, and option box, and we're just going to maintain offset. And now what we want to do is carefully look at how this is set up here. So right now, if I go back to reset settings and turn maintain offset on, if I create the setting right now, let's just see if it works the way that I expect it to. So as I rotate this around, yeah, it seems to be working okay. I just want to be careful because sometimes we can get unexpected behavior. All right. And I think that should be fine. All right, let's do the same thing for this guy, and this guy. We'll just say add. All right, so now as you see here, the eyeballs do follow wherever these little controls go. And because these controls together are controlled by the larger eyes global control, then as I move them around, the eyeballs will follow them around as well. Put that back to 0. Okay, so that was pretty straightforward. We're not going to yet parent this to the head because it is a little bit more of an operation to do this. I'll show you why in just a moment. But let's turn the head back on, and for now I'll turn off the wireframe unshaded. Okay, so at least those are working. And then we want to, let's see, what's the next one we want to do? Well, the next couple ones here are actually pretty straightforward. What we're going to do is basically just parent these remaining facial controls to the head control. There's nothing else we can connect them to at the moment. So let's start with the eyebrow, and we'll just shift select that and parent. It's P to parent. Do the opposite side. Okay, and grab the upper eyelid, lower eyelid. And so this is fortunately really straightforward and easy. Make sure that I did that correctly. I felt like maybe I didn't. Just go in here, just in my outliner, just verifying. You see the head controller here, and this is everybody who's underneath there. So right now that guy is sitting up there. So back here, P to parent, there it is. It's popped in underneath the head control now. All right, so we're going to do the same thing here for the mouth controls. So grab that, P to parent, P to parent, and there we go. We will do the exact same thing for the ears as well. A very, very straightforward process here. Okay. So then we just have a look around to see, are we missing anything? So if I rotate that joint there, what's not coming? Well, we got that mid eyebrow control. We're missing that. Okay, so let's make sure that that gets put up there as well. Very good. And then I think that's everybody, more or less. We still have that throat control to deal with as well, but we'll talk about that here in a moment. But let's talk about this, these eye controls here, because this is kind of interesting. Right now, if I click on this and I go into the outliner, I have eyes global control. And I want there to be two different ways for the eyes global control to work. One is where when I rotate the head control, it follows along with it. All right? That way, it's kind of predictable where the eyes are looking. It's kind of like when you rotate your head back, the eye gaze remains fixed, not on a point in space, but at a particular angle. And then the other way I want this to behave is when I rotate the head back for it to kind of do what it's doing right now, where this doesn't move at all. And therefore the eyes are staying, sort of fixing their gaze at one point in space, regardless of where the head is. So in order for that to happen, I need to play around with with one of the cool features within a parent constraint. So right now, if I click on this, you'll notice that I actually have a custom attribute that I've added to the eyes global control, and it's called follow head. Okay. In order to make this work, though, I cannot parent constrain the eyes global control to the head and turn on and off the function of the parent constraint that way, because it will cause problems. Instead, what I want to do is to actually group the eyes global control to itself and then apply the parent constraint to that group. So that's what we're going to do. We select the eyes global control and hit Control G to group it. Now, we're just going to call this eyes underscore global underscore capital GRP for group. Okay, so this is one of those cases where having a group, which otherwise would do nothing, is actually a meaningful way to apply a parent constraint in order for us to achieve a particular effect that we would run into issues with if we tried to just do it from the direct control itself. So now that I have that eyes global group created, we're going to parent constrain this to the head. So the head is going to be the parent, and we're going to control select the eyes global group and choose parent constraint. Okay, so as it is currently set up now, as I rotate this, you'll see that those eyes come along for the ride, which is what we would expect. But because this is a parent constraint and not just direct parenting, it means that if I come down and I select the eyes global group, over here in the shapes node, I now have the parent constraint node. And on any parent constraint, you have the ability to turn on and off the effect of the parent constraint, which is what this value is here, this W0 value. And if I change this from 1 to 0, and I rotate the head now, you'll see that that parent constraint no longer is causing the eyes to follow along with it. So, bearing that in mind, it's actually quite convenient now that we can set up a driven key so that we can switch between turning that parent constraint on and off. Okay, so what we're going to do is come into our animation menu, and we're going to go to Key, Set Driven Key, Set. Now the driver here is going to be the value that I set for follow head, which currently set to off. So we're just going to choose load driver and on eyes global control and select follow head. And the driven object is going to be this parent constraint here that you see, which is actually already loaded in as the driven object. So I'll just say load driven. And we are controlling this head control W0 value that I pointed out before. So here's the thing. Let's look at this. Eyes global control is currently, follow head is set to off, which means that, is it following the head? No. All right, good. So that's exactly the way we want. Follow head with that set to 0, that should correspond to the eyes global parent constraint having a value of 0. That's correct. So we'll just say, with that enabled, we'll just say key. So now what we want to do is go back to this eyes global control, clicking on that, and we're going to change this. So just type in 1, which is the same thing as doing on. Come back to our parent constraint, and we want this now to be a value of 1. And we'll key that. So now, if I look at my follow head here, it's set to on, and I rotate this, that eye control does follow along with the head. If I go in and select the eye control and turn that to off or 0, it'll snap back to where it is normally and not follow the head at all. So that's quite a convenient little setup that we have here, that we can decide whether or not we want that to actually inherit the location of or inherit the rotation of our head or not. But one thing that happens here is that if I have this set to off, then it means it's not inheriting the location of that, and it also isn't inheriting the location of my root control. So I want to make sure that at the very least it does inherit the location of the root control. So I'm going to click on the eyes global group, and we're going to parent that to the root control. And this should, if I have done it correctly, work properly. So it will rotate with that, and it should still be able to rotate independently with this, which is good. All right, so we can, this way, at least maintain consistency with the root control at the very least. Okay, Now, the last one that I need to set up is this little throat control that I have down here, just this little circle. And what we're going to do is just parent that to our neck control O1. So that's just a really simple one. So we'll say that's the child, that's the parent, P to parent, and now when I rotate my neck O1, that'll come along with it. So that should be enough here to get all of our basic controls set up. And in the next tutorial, we can start looking at how we skin the head to these joints.